This show is clean, pretty much.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Effizode 732. Hello, it's Mike Matthews broadcasting from the last place on earth, located somewhere in Podcastro Valley, California. Today, Benita, the Disgruntled Fiddle Player, the Brewmaster, plus it's the return of the feature News Random, where we look at some interesting stories about our society and our culture today. And Google sold a barge. Mike's Daily Podcast. That's not to be confused with the 80s group called The Barge. Mike's Daily Podcast. To the beat of the rhythm of the night. That's until the morning light. Forget about your worries on your mind. With apologies to Diana Feinstein. No, wait. Who wrote that song? Diane Warren. Thank you. You know, I know a lot about music. And sometimes I'm like, ew, I wish I would forget that song. But yet, Mike's Daily Podcast. It's stuck in my head and I can't get it out. I twist and shout, oh, Mike's, you spin me daily right round podcast like a record. Yeah! Oh, and these lyrics make no sense. 'Cause with your hand in my hand in a pocket full of soul, I can tell you there's no place we couldn't go. Just put your hand on the glass. I'll be trying to pull you through. You just gotta be strong. What's that to? I don't want to lose you now. I'm looking right at the other half of me. Look who just walked in. Hi, Mike. It's Benita, the rodeo queen. How y'all doing?
And it's a disgruntled fiddle player tell you what.
What?
What happened on yesterday's show? Benita showed up on it, didn't she?
Yeah, she was defending herself because I said her voice was screechy. I apologize for that, Benita. That's okay. Let bygones be bygones. And then, let's see, John Deere said that Floyd the Floorman was going to give him a cold. And I think we all know the reason why.
Because they stand too close together?
Well, because they're, you know, they're a couple.
They're a couple of friends?
That, you know, you just don't want to see the obvious to you, disgruntled fiddle player.
See two guys that enjoy each other's companies. What's wrong with that?
I don't know. Look who else just walked in.
Hello there, Mike. I make the root beer. I'm the Brewmaster. Oh, boy.
Brewmaster, what root beer did you make today?
Mike, in honor of you talking about colds, I made a cold root beer. Oh, boy.
Oh, I like it when my root beer is cold.
No, if you drink it, you catch a cold.
No.
'Cause I don't want to lose you now. I'm looking right at the other half of me.
It's like you're a mirror.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, this was interesting. Yesterday I was watching C-SPAN. Not just C-SPAN, but C-SPAN 3, because it's 3 times better than regular C-SPAN. You know, it can be exciting, especially when there's some congressman from the South who's yelling at a guy who's working for Obama and yelling at him about the immigration problem and not allowing the guy to defend himself. And what is it with all these Southern congressmen that have these horrible hair weaves and wigs and comb overs, like they're from the 1970s, trying to seriously, if you turn on the Nixon hearings, which they've been showing this week on C-SPAN 3 as well, you can tell I've been watching a lot of it. Fascinating historic time. 40 years ago it all happened, all went down with the Nixon impeachment. And back then, there were all these guys, you know, just trying to hold on to their hair by combing it over, looking ridiculous. And there they all are still today. But mostly the congressman from the South for some odd reason. I don't know what that is.
You don't understand, Mike. To lose your hair is to lose your dignity.
Did you lose your hair?
Heck no. Well, you'll never know because I wear my cowboy hat all the time.
Let's hear it for cowboy hats. They hide your bald spot. Just ask Kenny Chesney. Dwight Yoakam, Tim McGraw. Oh, Tim McGraw got a hair weave. Never mind. You know, what? Huh? It's like we've walked through the mirror glass. I don't want to... So the dialogue between the congressman and the guy working for Obama went something like this. Why don't you know if we ask the little immigrant kids if they're gangsters? Well, Congressman from some nondescript southern state, I'll have to get back to you with that information. There's no excuse for you not knowing now. Impeach Obama! Well, Mike, that sounds exciting. I should be watching C-SPAN 3. You should. It's very educational.
Mark, I think you're blowing this all out of proportion. Obama is president, so he should have his feet held to the fire.
Right. Now you want to barbecue our president. What would you have said if I had said that about George W. Bush? You would have been all, I'm unpatriotic and stuff.
No, that's not true. Okay, maybe a little bit.
Uh-huh. Whatever. I'm tired of you all talking about politics. Sorry, okay, let's talk about Google. This is fascinating. They have sold one of the 2 large barges. Wasn't she a character in the Pee Wee Herman movie? Don't forget to ask for Large Marge. Oh, that's different. 2 barges that were the subject of global fascination after they were uncovered by reporters last fall. The barges, one is in Stockton, California. Yes, Stockton is landlocked, but not really, because there are waterways that will take you all the way out through the Golden Gate Bridge out to the Pacific. And another in Portland, Maine. They carried 4-story high buildings made from cargo containers. Reporters discovered them, but the tech giant declined to acknowledge what they were or even if it owned them. These barges carried 4-story high buildings made from cargo containers. Crazy. That led to an outpouring of speculation, including that Google was secretly constructing a floating data center or a party boat, copying Scientologists. They're big on ships. That quote-unquote religion. Google eventually confirmed it owned the barges and said they were being turned into, quote, an interactive space where people can learn about new technology. Well, Wednesday, the Portland barge was towed to a new location where the containers are going to be disassembled, and the boat will be prepared for an ocean voyage, according to the Portland Press Herald. The barge was purchased by an undisclosed international shipping company. Google confirmed that to the LA Times, that it sold the barge, but it declined to say why. News reports have said that Google may have wanted to turn the barges into showrooms where invitation-only crowds could come see its products, most notably its glass smart glasses that make nerds all-powerful. Gives them the power of second sight. Well, speaking of that, the plan may have been scrapped as Google tries to change the perception that the $1,500 smart glass is a product for the elite. The company reportedly paid $400,000 in property taxes to keep the boats docked in Portland, according to the Press Herald. Google is still paying its $10,000 monthly fee to keep its other barge in Stockton. Perhaps they could use those barges to bring the commuters down, all the richity rich people that live in San Francisco, down to Mountain View every day. Like they've got those other ferries and stuff they've commissioned to take them down to Redwood City, actually, and avoid the traffic on the 101 by taking to the seas, or taking to the bay in this case. This story from the LATimes.com. What do you think about it? Do you think Google is taking over the world, much like yesterday we were talking about how Facebook was taking over the world? Well, of course they are taking over the world, but what do you think about these interesting purchases that these companies have made? In the Facebook case, they have dumped a lot of money into the internet.org app to spread that across Africa. Email me, MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST@gmail.com. We read your comments on the section emails from email. Also email me there if you'd like to be a guest on the show or if you'd like to sponsor the show. MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST@gmail.com. We also have links at the website, MIKES-DAILY-PODCAST.com, where to find us in iTunes. Subscribe to the show in iTunes, and you can rate and comment on the show there. There's also where to find us on the Facebook page. Like the Facebook page, and when I post a new show, share it with your friends. More people find out about us that way. There's also links to where to find us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Mixcloud, Yelp, Tumblr, Twitter, Stitcher. There is the Amazon deal of the day. Click on that and buy something at a great discount, and that helps us out too. There's also the blog and the daily podcast picture. All of that there at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com, as well as all my past interviews.
News Random.
This is a great little segment where we look at all kinds of interesting news stories, but in a random sort of way. And the topic today on News Random is society and culture. A little bit of the old and a little bit of the new, but first a little bit of trash.
Trash! Won't pick it up. Take them lights away. Trash! Won't get it up. Don't throw your love away.
In 2013, according to EastBayExpress.com, residents and businesses in Alameda County dumped as much as $70 million worth of recyclable and compostable items into the garbage. That's according to Stop Waste, the county agency charged with promoting recycling and waste reduction. On average, based on the agency's countywide trash audits last year, 32% of the material in residential garbage cans could have been recycled or composted. That was an improvement from 60% in 2008, but still far from Stop Waste's target of 10% by 2020. So, what are some of the most frequent mistakes that residents make when trying to get rid of stuff? And what is some of the material you may be surprised to know you can have that you can use for a second life? Well, there's first off food soiled paper. The greatest potential for waste reduction may lie in food products and not just spoiled leftovers or scraps from cooking. Different cities have their own residential food scrap recycling programs that keep food products, produce, bread, dairy, meat, fish, coffee grounds, tea bags, and more out of the landfill, typically through weekly pickups. But people often don't realize that they should also compost food soiled paper, meaning paper towels, plates, and napkins. According to a recent Stop Waste survey of a few hundred Alameda County residents, nearly 60% didn't know that. Residents should line their kitchen compost pails with recycled newspapers so that the whole thing can be dumped into the compost bin, which in many East Bay cities is typically the green yard trimmings container. Then there are pizza boxes. In the recent Stop Waste survey of Alameda County residents, even more people were confused about pizza boxes. Around 73% of respondents were unable to identify the paper or the proper way to dispose of pizza boxes. The correct answer, it turns out, is the compost bin. Contrary to popular belief, greasy pizza boxes do not belong in the recycling. Then there's cooking oil. It is one of the most common sources of confusion for residents. Most people know that cooking oil should not go down the drain, but they don't know where it should go. For small amounts, you can put the oil into an empty egg carton, which can then go into the compost. Alternatively, low quantities can also be drizzled directly into the bin. Large amounts from deep frying, for example, should not go into the compost and instead should be disposed of at one of 6 East Bay Municipal Utility District drop-off sites. Oil from commercial kitchens is not allowed. One especially sustainable option is the biodiesel station Biofuel Oasis in Berkeley. Residents can also take their cooking oil to one of the 4 county household hazardous waste facilities. Batteries, however, well, that's a different story. Dumping batteries into the recycling or trash bin isn't the answer, but the solution is almost as simple. In many cities in Alameda County, residents can actually put their batteries in sealed clear plastic bags and set them on top of the garbage cans for weekly pickup. Berkeley doesn't do this, however. Instead, residents can drop their batteries off at the local household hazardous waste facilities and at a number of hardware stores. Plastic shopping bags, to get rid of those and avoid polluting the waste stream, the best option is to return them, as long as they're clean and dry, to the grocery store. And you don't have to return them to the store where they were originated. Wire hangers are an issue, not just for Mommy Dearest, but also the waste management officials don't like them because, if you place them in the recycle bin, they can easily wrap around waste management machinery and cause damage. Instead, you should bring them to your local dry cleaning business. They typically accept them for reuse. Shredded paper. Well, does that go in the recycling? No. It actually goes into the compost, the green compost bin. It actually is a win-win because it helps reduce flies and odors in the bin, in addition to providing an extra layer of security for sensitive documents, as scavengers typically don't go through compost bins. And because shredding results in the splitting of fibers, you can't recycle it. You can't recycle it like you would recycle other paper. If residents are concerned about putting non-shredded documents that contain private information into the recycling, they should instead use them to wrap their compost and dump them into the green bin. Prescription drugs should, of course, not be flushed down the toilet. Instead, they should be placed in Ziploc bags and dropped off at roughly 30 sites in the East Bay that accept them. Prescription-controlled substances, drugs that have a high potential for being abused, including codeine, narcotic pain medications, sleeping pills, antidepressants, behavioral drugs, basically everything Rush Limbaugh uses, should go into the Alameda County Sheriff's Eden Township substation, which has a self-service drop box in the lobby. Foam peanuts, polystyrene, that has to go in the garbage. Sometimes you can take them back to the a local packaging store for reuse, but most times they go into the garbage. Fluorescent tubes and bulbs shouldn't go into the garbage. Instead, they should be taken to the local household hazardous waste facilities, or some hardware stores will take them. Pet waste and diapers have to go into the garbage. They can't go into the composting for some various reasons, which we will not go into here, thankfully. Hardcover books cannot be recycled because of the glue, and thus they should be taken to your local used bookstore or thrift store. Please do that. I had to unfortunately throw away some books. Thankfully, they were all in horrible condition, but when I was going through my dad's stuff, I had to do that, and I still regret that. I feel like I should have at least taken them to a thrift store. Laboratory chemicals, they need to be actually taken to the household hazardous waste facilities, especially those mysterious chemicals. There have been many inquiries to the household waste, hazardous waste organizations and departments that come from residents who discover an old chemical, for example, that their grandfather left behind. In these instances, the materials may not even be safe for the hazardous waste facilities, and in the worst case scenario can require the county to call in the bomb squad. I heard of a situation like this where someone had collected mercury for, I think he made thermostats, and he had a huge collection of mercury, and they had to call the hazardous waste department to come pick it up. Technology is making chemical identification easier, as residents can now snap photos of the materials in question with their cell phones and email or text them to household hazardous waste staff.
Just take those old records off the shelf.
Yeah, take those old records off the shelf. According to East Bay Express, sometime around 1980, when he was 14 years old, Davy D was scavenging through records in a New York music store when he stumbled upon some Harry Nilsson recordings. Nilsson was a rare breed, a singer-songwriter whose fame and awards arose not so much from his own performance, but from those of others. For example, his song One was recorded by Three Dog Night. Africa Bambaataa, the stage name of Kevin Donovan, a DJ from the South Bronx who's often credited with jump-starting hip-hop, was in the store when I found that record, said Davy D. He was a pioneer, but also he was feared because he was a gang leader. He came over, asked what it was. I told him the name, and he just nodded his head. I snatched up all 5 copies that were there. Since then, the influential DJ, journalist, and radio show host Davy D has amassed some 70,000 records. In an interview, he said that he's a curator, a keeper of Oakland's distinctive musical history, and not a collector. His connection to music is more about emotions than economics. He said, He spoke of alphabetizing his records by genre and describing their BPMs, beats per minute. He says the special ones have been with me most of my life. I won't sell those even though I've been offered a lot of money. They might end up on a shelf and part of our history would be gone. Such nostalgic associations to records form the basis of vinyl, the sound and culture of records. It's an interactive exhibit running through July 27th at the Oakland Museum of California. While museums have been known to take a common activity like spinning an old record and render it untouchable and precious, this exhibit aims to honor the vinyl format through sharing. It includes vinyl-focused talks, performances, and listening stations at which visitors can play the contents of individual curated crates, each containing 33 records that tell a personal story, one of which Davey D has assembled. Although he clearly reveres vinyl, Davey D said, records aren't spectacles, objects to be viewed with awe, or valued so much that they become untouchable and are never played. He refuses to state a preference for digital over vinyl or vice versa. Instead, he believes each form is a unique tool for connection. Vinyl sound is warmer than digital, he said, and he likes that he associates songs with album covers such that when he's DJing, he can flip through records and easily locate a song. On the other hand, he also likes the flexibility of a digital recording. I can manipulate it to accentuate the moment, he says.
So what am I doing now? Read about it. Just another
Reading. Read about it. John Green, the 36-year-old young adult fiction author whose latest bestseller, The Fault in Our Stars, has been adapted into a movie. He was at BookCon, the inaugural event. And it's an annual event where publishers gathered May 29th through the 31st, unloaded their fall lists on booksellers, according to the New York Observer. BookCon is where movies and pop culture reign, and the event, its namesake, seems to fall by the wayside. Teen fans arrived in droves with their mothers and fathers to see authors of several wildly popular series, including Divergent, The Mortal Instruments, and Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Oh, and there was also Grumpy Cat, the living internet meme, peddling a book published by Chronicle called The Grumpy Cat, the Grumpy Guide to Life, Observations from Grumpy Cat. This was no literary festival. Marketed as where storytelling and pop culture collide, it was heavy on colliding. Nearly 10,000 visitors milled about, cramming together in endless lines, pushing their way into conference rooms, and swimming upstream through the expo's maze of booths. This event was all about greed. Overheard was one mother talking to her daughter as they thrust themselves through the crowd to escape an elevator. They sold the maximum amount of tickets, she said, without thinking about logistics. Lance Festerman, the manager of the event, said to New York Magazine before BookCon kicked off that he was hoping for an urban, educated, sophisticated crowd. He was half-jokingly imagining college graduates with at least 6 figures of student loan debt. What he got were young girls impatiently waiting to see a discussion between Amy Poehler and Martin Short, New Jersey moms cutting the line to get to Kathy Reichs, and plump dads in Marvel Comics t-shirts arguing with security guards outside a talk by Stan Lee. Maybe the collegiate literary establishment stayed home, either to read or worry about all that debt. I've got so many books, I'm going to be in the summer reading program forever, one tie-clad prepubescent boy said after exiting the John Green panel. BookCon may not have drawn the intellectual crowd that Mr. Festerman was misguidingly hoping for. How could it, with a lineup of movie stars and middle-brow literary celebrities that included Tina Fey, Jason Bateman, John Grisham, Jodi Picoult, and Ruth Reichel? I grew up going to cons like this, Ms. Reichel told a crowd at the Ladies of Bestsellerdom panel, which is probably not true. BookCon got a different audience one that values books and pop culture alike and maybe doesn't see much of a difference between the two, and it's very possible that someday at least a few of them will ditch Grumpy Cat for something a little more enlightening.
No matter what the future brings as time goes by.
Yes, time does go by. And this is a neat little article in my local Podcastro Valley Forum newspaper that Carl Medford wrote. He said, "Grow old along with me," wrote Robert Browning. "The best is yet to be. Growing older means coping with migrations. Hopefully children have migrated up and out of the home. Hair begins moving from your head to your eyebrows and ears. Previously well-toned bicep material appears to be heading to regions unknown. A friend of mine," says Carl Medford, "approaching the magic number 60, complained bitterly about the onset of a serious case of furniture disease. His chest was apparently dropping into his drawers. And memories of our youth appear to be migrating to the furthest recesses of our minds. Our attitudes begin to migrate as well. We start viewing things with suspicion, such as younger generations and stares. Living in a multi-leveled home no longer has the allure it used to. Instead of being separated from the kids by a floor, we're now parted by miles. With knees and feet beginning to display annoying twinges, the idea of having everything on one level is growing in appeal. And so the final migration has to do with the house. In our case, we no longer need 6 bedrooms spread over a number of floors at one time. All full, they now stand vacant, waiting for the few times of year that everyone floods home for special events. The pool also lies empty most of the time. While we've entertained the romantic notion of opening a bed and breakfast or even a boarding house, common sense has prevailed, and we've concluded that in reality we no longer need this house. We don't want the expense of heating, maintaining and cleaning spaces that are seldom used. And to be honest, we like the idea of finally being alone. So, like many others in our shoes, we're looking to downsize. With careers in full swing, we're still far removed from retirement living. But the idea of a smaller home with everything on one level has a tremendous appeal. Something quaint and charming. Something featuring an upscale kitchen, beautiful bathrooms, space for a home office, a small scenic yard, and only one guest bedroom. Is that you? Do you feel that way as time goes by?
On that you can rely.
No matter what the going outside of the last place on earth, where we bring you Mike's Daily Podcast somewhere in Podcastro Valley, California.
And here's today's podcast picture.
Oh, it was a couple years ago that my wonderful cousin from Germany, Anne-Katrine, who you hear at the beginning of the show going, Mike's Daily Podcast, and that's, by the way, that's her grandfather at the very beginning going, I'm going to play you another song. That's what he's saying. People ask me what's he saying, and there you go. She, Anne-Katrine, came to visit me in 2012, and my ex-wife and I took her down to Los Angeles to show her parts of that, Hollywood and whatnot, Santa Monica, etc. And then we went up to Ventura, where I used to live, and then up to Santa Barbara, and, I went to UCSB, but there we were at the Santa Barbara Wharf, Stearns Wharf, and that's actually Santa Barbara is where I first was ever on the radio, at Y97, Santa Barbara's Hot FM. But I got a picture there on the beautiful Stearns Wharf. It was a beautiful day, as it usually is in Santa Barbara. And you can see that beautiful picture. It'll teleport you there by looking at it. MikesDailyPodcast.com. Mark, that's a beautiful picture. I wish I could go to Santa Barbara right now. And I'd go and I would hug Oprah. Yeah, she lives there in Montecito, right next door. Really expensive to live in Santa Barbara. Heck, it's expensive to live in California. Let's just be honest.
Mark, I prefer if you don't be honest, and if you don't tell me what's really going on between Floyd and John Deere, please.
All right. keep your head in the sand, and keep reaching for the stars.
I don't think that's how that went.
Yeah, you're right. The next show, we're going to hear a great local band called Cash for Gold. Plus, we're going to hear from Madame Rootabega, Valentino, and Bison Bentley.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at MIKEs-DAILY-PODCAST.com. Email Mike now at MIKES-DAILY-PODCAST@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Because I don't want to lose you now. Country version of that song would work.